To the contrary, no. I declare that. We come now to the last item, substantive item on the agenda, which is about the endorsement of the Mayor and Deputy Mayor as sponsors of the Auckland Light Rail project. Just before we move that, sorry, I'm going to move it because I've got a chair's... I'm sorry, Councillor Collins, because there is a further recommendation B, which is on the screen in front of you. You'll recall that when the Minister of Transport came to speak to us, he suggested that there would be a local board representative on the establishment unit itself, but he also suggested that perhaps we could put a councillor on the board, and I rang to confirm that and had a discussion with him this morning to confirm it. And yes, there is a place for a councillor on it. So I'm recommending that we endorse the chair of the relevant committee, the planning committee, as a member of the establishment unit board of the light rail project. Also bringing to, sorry, I'm losing that. That we also have council officers on the establishment unit, yourself, Jim, and I think Megan, Shane on, is just the two of you? Yeah, okay. So I'll add that in, and if so, I'll move, and Councillor Collins will second, and we'll now have questions, beginning with Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Your Worship. In querying B, I have a question that's actually legitimate. You might think I'm being frivolous. But I've been around the planning of transport issues and watching it closely, you know, a lot of my life. And as Megan will know, as a legacy Auckland City officer, how important it was in the planning of Britomart and other subsequent decisions that were taken in and around public transport. We actually used, in terms of our reference group, the National Council of Women, because men and women, I have discovered, look at public transport quite differently, you know, and especially along those routes of key arterials. So with no disrespect at all to the Chair of Planning, we've got, and I don't underestimate the power of one Megan Tyler, she saved a tree today for me, but in terms of elected members, we have traditionally seen it completely male-dominated. And I don't in any way disregard the great intelligence that Councillor Darby has, but I would like to see someone like Angela or someone like, you know, I'd like, no, this is not self-promotion, I don't want to do it. But I would be bitterly disappointed. We have fought for light rail for a very, very long time. It's been on the table, off the table, on the table. If this is to get traction, we need to give it every consideration and a strong wind behind it, blowing it along. So I'm uncomfortable with your proposal here, Your Worship. I think that there should be an elected member who will represent the women of Auckland, and I would like you to give consideration to that.
Thank you. Councillor Daniel Newman.
Megan, in the report set out under paragraph 17, it deals with the challenging issue of the financial implications to date. It states that 1.8 billion allocated for, quote, seed funding from city centre to Māngere and Northwest Rapid Transit. The final costs and funding implications for city centre to Māngere will be known once Cabinet has made decisions on the mode, route and the delivery entity. I accept that what we're being asked to do here is to endorse a sponsorship relationship, but I also sense the Trojan horse rumbling very slowly, and it worries me because I haven't yet seen any clarity around the concept that this is the government's aspiration, the government's project, and the government pays, it sort of feels to me like we're kind of being, we're almost dancing into a relationship which is going to also involve the allocation of a lot of cost. So what comments, if any, do you have at this time to give me comfort that the costs will actually go to the Crown and not be split?
Through the chair, let me start by saying I'm sure I won't be able to give you the reassurance that you're looking for. All I can say that, well, not completely. All I can say is, if I reflect on the minister's media release, the decisions are being made by cabinet. It is clearly a government project, and they have taken responsibility for that at that level. And certainly, previous conversations in the previous term of government was that this was to be paid for by government. I understand and hear your concerns. There's nothing more I can say about that, but clearly the matter of funding will continue to be discussed through both this process and any decision that's ultimately made, and therefore how it gets delivered. So I can't provide you reassurance that there will be no conversation with you as a council at any point in time about funding, but it is clear that this is a government proposal. The Minister has said Cabinet will make the decision. That's where it sits at this stage.
So any operating cost in relation to the Establishment Unit Board and the work associated with it, the consultancy around this will all ultimately be borne by government, and if there's any cost incurred by council, we'll be reimbursed for that.
Yes, so that's absolutely right. So we are able to be reimbursed for the time that the staff put into this proposal, so it enables backfilling or whatever that might need to happen. That's absolutely right. You talked about operational cost and in terms of this process, but also clearly when this is up and running, presumably, again, the operator will be Auckland Transport. So clearly there must be some operational costs associated. But again, there's no more information or detail around that. That is all part of the conversation that needs to happen.
I think that's a good question, Councillor, and you've heard me speak on it a number of times. There has been no public suggestion made to me, or private suggestion, I should add, that we will be paying for this. I thought quite cleverly we loaded the cost of that at the time of the last Auckland Transport Alignment project on the government, and didn't accept that this was something that council could meet. Like Megan, I can't give the assurance, but what I can say is our involvement at both the establishment unit level and at the sponsorship level, I would expect your representatives were to push back against the contribution by Auckland on this. The contribution we made, the 50% contribution to CRL, was extraordinary. That probably also should have been a central government cost. And we're not wanting and not able to see that replicated for light rail. We simply don't have the money, which is always a good defence.
Are you anticipating a proposition? Are you anticipating we'll have to push back?
I'm hoping no, but always get your defence in before you have the attack. And I've made it clear to the Minister that we certainly don't have the ability and don't believe that we have the obligation to fund this, because it is the equivalent of a state highway, if you like. And I don't think there'd be any disagreement around the table on the point that you and I are both making on that. The OPEX of running it in the end, that's a different matter, and we'll have to address that at the time, as I'm sure you're aware. Councillor John Watson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm not quite sure what you're going to do with Councillor Fletcher's question, but I do notice in the agenda where the Minister of Transport has identified the importance of inclusive governance structure, and I'd imagine that would go to the principle of diversity too. But notwithstanding what Councillor Fletcher said in terms of herself, I do note that there is only one person here in this assembled group who has direct experience with a project of this magnitude, and I think of Britomart project, which was an incredibly challenging one, and which is a pivotal role in our region's network now, and that was Councillor Fletcher herself, who navigated a very difficult path there. So I'm just thinking in terms of that inclusiveness and diversity and background in the early 2000s of actually delivering for the region this remarkable project that now serves us all so well. If Councillor Fletcher herself might reflect on that, because certainly in terms of experience and track record on the ground as a former Mayor of Auckland, I don't think there's too many better, but I'll wait to hear what you say about that at some point.
Thank you. Well, maybe I can respond to that now. You'll note that the nominations are not of individuals, they're of positions. So it says the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor. It doesn't say Phil Goff and Bill Cashmore. And as Chair of the Planning Committee, it doesn't say Chris Darby. And that's, I think, and I put the recommendation forward after discussion with the Minister, it's the position that is being held that needs to be represented on it rather than the personality. So if you have a different Mayor and Deputy Mayor and Chair of the Planning Committee for the next term, they may all be women. I don't know. That's not yet decided. I'm not sure how I quite respond to that, councillors. But then it's the position that we're putting up, not the individual. I'd probably also say that for councillors, and we've got at least we've got 5 councillors around here who will be affected by the light rail proposal, affecting the Manukau ward, the Onehunga Mangakiakia, the Mangakiakia Tamaki ward, and the Albert Eden ward, and Waitemata, actually. Sorry, yes, Councillor Coombe. There may be some advantages for the councillors in each of those areas to have the independence of not being part of the establishment unit where they're subject to confidentiality and would have some difficulty commenting on those matters. So that may be also a factor, but the critical factor, Councillor Watson, is that it's the position that's being put up, not the individual. We've got no further questions. Are there any comments? Councillor Filipaina, I don't know whether that was a late question or an early comment.
Not early comment.
Early comment?
But if there's questions before the comment.
Oh, okay. It's a question then.
Thinking of, no, it's a comment. But I don't know if there's any questions.
No, sorry.
Before I do the comment.
No, we've run out of questions, so it's now for comment, and I've recognised you first.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, just in regards to what you just said around having the ability to still be part of the process and not around the confidentiality with this particular group is the reason why I was going to say I don't want to be part of it. And the reason I didn't want to be part of it, even though I ended up chairing the Transport Committee in 2004, and we ended up doing the railway spur from Manukau through to the main North Island trunk line. And that was established in 2009. The reason I don't want to be part of it is exactly what you're saying. I've spoken to the Minister in regards to the input with this particular project. The local board, as you are aware, Your Worship, the local boards will end up having the ability to put somebody onto this. So I'm going to leave that to Māngere o Tahuhu local board. So look, I endorse A. Chair, just in regards to the comments made by Councillor Fletcher and also Councillor Watson and your reply, just to confirm that what you're indicating in B is that the person who is currently the chair will be Councillor Darby, and depending on the next election in October of 2022, is whoever that person is of the planning committee would be automatically onto this establishment group. So if that is the case, again, it'll be interesting to see what comments come through from there. Yeah, I am glad that Councillor Darby's name wasn't there because I would not have supported that. But it is the position. Thank you.
Thank you, that's quite correct. So if the chair of the planning committee or the mayor or the deputy mayor was to change next month for whatever reason, I don't like that response from the deputy mayor. He's trying to opt out early. Then it's the position, not the individual. You're absolutely right. Councillor Linda Cooper.
Thank you. I do support Councillor Fletcher's view. I mean, even just then, I'd put my name down to speak. It was already down there. I think you get to a certain age as a woman and you become invisible. And I think excuse me. So I think that the issue here is that if we look at even our chairs group is predominantly men. We have our mayor and deputy mayor, and all due respect, because you both work exceptionally hard and have got some great results for our city. But if you look at it, so it's going to be by default a male-dominated representation. Even with Auckland Transport, they sit here in front of us, it's pretty much all guys. There is an element, something good about having a mixed group of people on a board. We've got evidence that shows that, but over and over again, it's the blokes. And so we need to be looking at that a lot more closely. So there's that. The other thing about this is that I just have to register my huge disappointment. That this is Mangere, City Centre to Mangere. This is just a repeat of what we had 3 years ago. We've been through all this before with a different minister. So here we go again, wasting more time. We wasted 3 years where we had a busway for the North West. It was going to be 100% paid for by the government. It was right, we had busway. Then we were going to have light rail, 100% paid for by the government. Now we're back to some busway improvements, which is, again, we have to find money for. We've got a huge growth right across our region. But again, the North West gets left out. And there's people out there just cannot, our community cannot understand it. I'm reading all of our submissions here, it's, and it just over and over again, people say, we're being left behind again, we've been left behind again. And so here we'll have another, goodness knows how long this will be. And good, I think we need to do it. It needs to be done, absolutely. But we always do it at the expense of another part of our city. And I just think that's a tragedy because we have much fewer employment opportunities out there as well. So for me, yes, it's going to get on. The minister's even told us, I can't even give you a timeline for light rail in the North West. That's what he said. I can't even give you a date. So all good if it goes ahead, but it just seems to me a repeat of what's already been done before. Another 3 years will be wasted and people are waiting. It's disappointing. But I would happily propose, Councillor Fletcher, if you were to go in that place. But I get you don't want to.
I decline because I don't enjoy the confidence the mayor has.
So I hope that whoever goes from the local board is a woman. There's some very capable women in the local boards in these local board areas. I hope that there is somebody, because we just need a different view. I've just done a speech at Anzac Day about women in service and an important part that women played in a national and in a global sense. When times were tough, women stepped up. But what happens is as soon as it's not considered tough anymore, we go to the back again. So I hope that this works, but I honestly haven't got a lot of faith because we've already wasted, it's actually 4 years now. But I hope we can get some better transport outcomes for all, but it doesn't seem that what we were promised nearly 4 years ago is any closer. Thank you. Notwithstanding the efforts of the mayor and the deputy mayor to move things forward.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor. Staying with the West, Councillor Shane Henderson.
Kia ora. Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, look, I just wanted to briefly speak in support of this. I think that the government is starting to make strides in this, and I think the establishment unit is a fantastic idea, and I think we should get fully behind it. What I would urge is that that establishment unit is tasked not just with city centre Te Mangere, but with creating precedent and relationships and tools that can be used across the city, and not just the Northwest either. Because we've got huge challenges coming up, and Councillor Cooper has said this very well. We've made promises to people in the Northwest. We're packing people in there, and we should, because we have a housing crisis. But at the very time we are increasing housing in the Northwest, we're not doing what we need to do in terms of transport. We're looking at facilities, and I understand that's a huge debate to come. And people are concerned. They want the public services that the rest of the city have. So I think this unit should be tasked with not just city centre Te Mangere, but creating things that can be replicated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Daniel Newman.
This is very interesting. I think that, as I said it to Michael Wood in the discussion, I have confidence in Michael Wood. He's becoming something of a Mr. Fix-It within...
The Bill Birch of the Labour Party.
Thank you for the interjection.
I'm not sure whether he'll take that as a compliment, Councillor.
I have the call. I think he has a very big job to clean up a very, very big mess. And that's what this project is. I'm not overly excited, Councillor Henderson, I'm not overly excited. I would almost describe it as like a surgical team that's being gathered together for consultations as to how to provide treatment to a very distressed situation. It's a situation that requires a lot of triaging, and the report identifies in a very diplomatic way some fundamental issues. Number one, well, the business case hasn't been settled, hasn't been signed off by the Cabinet. There are reasons for that. We saw in the previous term of central government, there were issues with parties to the government. There were issues in respect to competing propositions. It was never landed. What we have seen is that there has been for generations a concept of light rail from the city centre to Mount Roskill. This is going beyond that. It's not funded. We don't even know what the costs would be to be funded, and I'm very suspicious about where the costs would ultimately fall. I think Councillor Cooper is absolutely right. And when you go out to West Auckland and you see the car park that is the Northwestern Motorway, it is a debacle. And I thought that there was going to be a solution for the Northwest 4 or 5 years ago. It was announced, and it just hasn't emerged. What is emerging is that the debacle is getting worse. But we're going to have a conversation where the people, in this case, the men of the establishment unit are going to get together, and they're going to triage the concept for a discussion so as to take something back to Cabinet at some point, for a decision to be made at some point, which will be funded at some point by somebody, probably, I suspect, a combination of them and us, and I'm bloody worried about that. So, Your Worship, I want to acknowledge you for the work that I have no doubt will be consuming more of your life, because that's what I feel that this particular project is about. It is all inclusive, all encompassing, and it will literally continue to drain people. But I hope that we can get some clarity around this soon, because I think this is a very significant potential financial liability, Councillor Simpson, that is going to be well beyond the scope of this council's balance sheet. And I'm not sure what the opportunity cost will be, but I'm sure that the opportunity cost will be paid for significantly by those poor people in West Auckland and the Northwest who don't have a solution in place. So, Chair, Your Worship, it's a recommendation, but I do hope that we push back urgently around the allocation of costs, because we shouldn't be paying for this.
Thank you. I've got that message loud and clear. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Beer. I think from memory, Mr. Birch was one of the key architects of the Think Big projects, wasn't he? So I'm not quite sure that Minister Wood would want to be associated with some similar type of infrastructure. But anyway, thank you for your explanation, Mr. Mayor, in terms of the appointments following positions rather than personalities. However, and that's a perfectly valid response. But I think Councillor Cooper and Councillor Filipaina also have raised some valid points that don't really get addressed through that approach. Not least of which is a genuine lack of diversity, because as we found out this morning, individuals are very important. It's not just positions, it's the character of those individuals. And I don't want to labour the point, but we really think we're missing a little bit of a beat here in terms of the expertise and experience that exists within this body in terms of Councillor Fletcher and Britomart, which if you read through any history of those times was really quite an achievement to deliver that project. And pre-Super City Auckland, and admittedly ARC Chair Phil Warren was an important player in that too. So I think, with COVID we did talk a lot about flexibility and, changing and being, a little bit more adaptive, and doesn't seem to be particularly prevalent in this recommendation here. I think it's important in these sort of positions that we do, get as good an appointment as we can. I mean, we had an instance with the ports where, to me it seems incredible that we don't have an actual worker or workers representative on a board. That seems to me to be quite startling. I think of boards of every secondary school in New Zealand has a teacher, has a worker on it. In fact, they have a student on it too, so they have two. So I think some of our appointments are really out of step with the 2020s, really, and this, without offering casting any aspersions on the individuals here. I think we've missed that opportunity here. As much as it could change last term, there's going to be a very important introductory period coming up, where a lot of things are going to be put in place, which then follow as a consequence of that. A little bit like the implementation plan for safety on the ports. That's been done. Well, a certain amount of the work will be done here, and I guess it's called the members of the establishment. We've tended to really reflect that word in its fullest meaning. We don't really have some of the diversity, and in Councillor Fletcher's instance, the expertise that is available. But I take your point, Mr. Mayor, but I think it's a lost opportunity to perhaps show a little bit of flexibility that might address some of the issues that other councillors have raised. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And last speaker is Councillor Chris Fletcher.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. When you go back to Albert Street today, councillors, I want you to just pause on the steps of Aotea Square and have a look at the Toby Twiss bronze sculpture that Mike Lee and I'd lost the mayoralty at that point because it was all about Chrissy's little train set, and talkback radio worked against me, and I was trying to envisage for Aucklanders without the practical props of showing how a competitive international city might truly work. Anyway, lost the mayoralty, that was fine. And I might add that John Banks had the graciousness to come a year later and apologise profusely to me and say you were absolutely right on everything. And that was very kind of him to do that. But back in 2002, Mike Lee and I decided that we needed a reminder that good things don't just happen as of right. And when we get stuff, we always assume, well, of course that was always going to happen. But it doesn't always. just happen. It requires absolute tenacity and determination and a fair bit of cunning, actually. And if there's one thing I would probably like to be recognised for the record, not Britomart and not the rail corridors, it's actually getting the CRL through, because I really was grateful to Len Brown. The CRL was always part of Britomart. It was the missing link. And I will always feel grateful to Len Brown that he let me play a small part in actually the delivery on that. And no, we didn't get the funding we wanted, but we at least got it off the ground in the hope that we could negotiate it rather better to the Auckland ratepayers than we did. So what Mike and I decided was we don't write our history properly in Auckland, but we're really good with visual stuff. And I don't know how many times I've seen, and Legacy Auckland City wouldn't pay for it. It actually had to be funded. Eventually, I think they all are rather proud of it. But 2002 saw a group of individuals get that off the ground. And I feel really happy every time I walk past it, because it's about vision and it's about guts and determination. And on that, I'd like to pause and reflect on Mike Lee for a moment here today, because we wouldn't have a lot of what we have without Mike. And I know he pissed a lot of you off, but he was just so committed, sometimes at the point that, you know, he lost people along the way, but we all play our part and it weaves together and we get those outcomes that we need. So I want to feel that we do have diversity there. I don't buy into the geographical representation thing, because frankly, you wouldn't have had any of the infrastructure that we've got today if we all looked at it in a parochial way about our wards. This is the time when we need to think regionally, where every one of us sitting around this table has to be a regional councillor. So I don't mind whether it's, if we want to go along the issue of the position, I don't mind that it is Councillor Simpson as the Chair of Finance, but it's obviously got to be somebody who enjoys the Mayor's confidence, because it's his governance structure that we work under and his committee structure that we are here on. But I feel really passionately about this. You might think it's just a token issue. I think this is our chance, and I do feel huge empathy for the people of the West. I really applaud the contribution that we've heard from Linda Cooper and Shane Henderson today. We are precedent setting with this. If it's ever to get off the ground, we have to get it right. Why not Councillor Cooper? You know, why not Councillor Cooper? I implore you to reflect on that, Your Worship, and that you might reconsider, because it's hard to get good things done. And this is our chance. This is our moment to actually shape it and create the right foundations and know that we've all played our part in giving it a good push. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. If I can just speak and reply. Just acknowledging councillors Cooper and Henderson, very conscious of the needs of the Northwest, and has not been well served by government decisions going right back to, you know, the failure to put a busway on the Northwest years ago. And I have to say, I thought when the promise was made to do light rail simultaneously to both areas, I didn't think that was particularly realistic. And actually, I had a conversation with Councillor Cooper about that. I don't think she did either. We have to start somewhere, however, and, you know, I'll just say this because the conversation went a bit wider than the recommendations in front of us. I absolutely believe you've got to have a rapid transit system that's consistent around the city, and it's got to start with where it's needed most. And I'd still argue it's not just city centre to Mount Roskill, but it's to Mangere, and it's because those huge growth in the Auckland housing program in Mount Roskill, in Onehunga and in Mangere that we're catering for, and connecting people to the work areas of the city centre and the airport precinct. But we'll continue to push for that, councillors, and a decent go for the northwest. But at the moment, we've got to start somewhere, and I think where Michael Wood has started is logical. I should comment. Maybe I commented unfairly. Bill Birch was a hard-working minister on the other side of the House. He worked his guts out, and I hugely admire him for that. I didn't agree with him on Think Big, and if you draw that parallel between Michael Wood and Bill Birch, it's a fair parallel, but I probably wouldn't go beyond the hard work ethic, because neither of them would thank us for that. In regard to Councillor Newman's queries, look, one thing I should have made checked up on, I hope everybody's aware that the chair of the establishment unit has been appointed, Lee Orton, and I know that our councillors in the south who have worked with Lee Orton will have big confidence in Lee, and he did a pretty special job together with his two colleagues on the CCO review. So I think that will help. But the truth is, if I just stray a little bit onto this area again, we do not have the financial ability to meet the costs of something of the scale of light rail, which is going to be even bigger than the City Rail Link. And that's where I believe the argument begins and ends, actually. Yes, we'll have to pick up some of the operating costs, but we don't have the ability to put the capital up. The other question is the question of diversity. And, you know, I hear what people are saying, and I'm sympathetic to that. I did have a young woman on a panel with me down at the Wynyard Quarter last week, decrying the fact that the mayor wasn't a woman, and my response was my only defence, I think, was I said, for heaven's sake, you've got the Prime Minister, you've got the Chief Justice, and you've got the Governor General. You're going to leave the guys with something. And look, it will be the case that there will be women mayors and deputy mayors and chairs of the planning committee, and we have seen progress in terms of the gender balance on this council, and that's good. If I was appointing it on the basis of it being an individual, I would absolutely have wanted to appoint I'm sorry, I'm in reply, councillor. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I would absolutely have made a different decision. But we are doing this on the basis of the positions, and when the people holding those positions change, and we know at least one of those will, because unfortunately the Deputy Mayor has announced that he's not going to run again for council, you know, then that situation will change. And that's all I can say. But the discussion that I had with the Minister was the logic of having the chair of the planning committee who has the responsibility, the primary responsibility in that area of transport, then that's where we go. So look, it has been moved and seconded, so I'm going to put it to the vote. All those by division, or I can either do it by division, councillor, or if you wish to have your name recorded against by division, it's a request made, so we'll do it by division. So I'll ask Sandra to take the vote on recommendations A and B.
It's only on B.
Okay, well, that's been clarified. So first of all, I'll put recommendation A. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. I declare that carried. Would you like your vote counted against that, Deputy Mayor? So I'll now ask Sandra to take the vote on recommendation B by division.
Okay, councillors, you're voting on clause B. Mayor Goff.
Aye.
Councillor Bartley.
Yeah, whatever. For it.
Councillor Casey.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Cashmore.
Aye.
Councillor Collins.
Oh.
Councillor Coombe.
Aye.
Councillor Cooper.
Aye.
Councillor Dalton.
Aye.
Councillor Filipina.
Aye.
Councillor Fletcher.
No.
Councillor Henderson.
Yes.
Councillor Hills. Councillor Mulholland.
For.
Councillor Newman. Councillor Sayers.
For.
Councillor Simpson. Councillor Stewart. Councillor Walker. Councillor Watson. Councillor Young. So that's carried 18 votes to 1 with
So-
1 abstention.
So that is declared carried, 18 votes to 1 with 1 abstention, and item 11 has been carried. Item number 12 is summary of governing body information memoranda. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Walker and Councillor Henderson. If there's no discussion on that, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Carried. There is no extraordinary item, and I declare the meeting closed and thank councillors very much, and have a good weekend when you get to it.